breaking news on WFLA Now.
The Emergency Policy Group update on coronavirus to order. Again, make sure that your telephones are on mute, or their TV or Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, or YouTube that you're listening to. Please turn it down, the volume down. Again, please mute your phone so we won't get any feedback. We all know the purpose of the meeting, so I'm going to ask the clerk now to call the roll.
Miller?
Here.
Overman?
Here.
Berman?
Here.
Cronister? Here. Castor?
Here.
Ross? Watt? Snively?
Here.
All right. Believe you have quorum.
Okay. We all know why we're here, and that is to put the best piece of document we can, a directive in place so we can protect the citizens of this county. So every one of you had an opportunity to review the executive order. Mr. Merrill, are you going to explain this, or will one of the county attorneys explain? Mr. Merrill, you on the phone?
Yes, I think we'll turn this over to the county attorney.
Okay, which county attorney is going to handle this?
Commissioner Miller, this is Christine Beck.
Okay, good afternoon.
And I'll give you a quick summary. As you know, yesterday we were directed to work collaboratively with council for the 3 cities, the sheriff, and the school board to prepare a draft stay-at-home directive and curfew order, which has been distributed and has received input from everybody. The distinction between the stay-at-home directive and the curfew order is spelled out in the order. The directive is designed to strongly encourage the public to follow the mandates in the order, but is not doesn't lead to prohibitions. The curfew is to be followed during the weekend hours, and violation of it could result in a warning or pursuant to paragraph 13, which talks about how the order would be enforced. We have added a number of exemptions in addition to the federal Homeland Security exemptions at the request of various members, and we believe we've captured all of the requests we've received to date. If there were document that can be accommodated either at a future EPG meeting or through the delegated authority to the county administrator if there is a need for further refinement. And it might be best now to simply be open to questions. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Beck. Are there any questions? Are there any questions?
I have a question for for Christine Beck. This is Commissioner Overman, please.
Mr. Overman, you recognize.
Thank you very much. What we hear today, and I just want to make sure it's clear, that that the language now includes a curfew that begins at 10 p.m. tomorrow evening, or Friday, March 27th. It's in effect on a 24-hour basis until 5 a.m. on Monday. In other words, on the weekends, there is a 24-hour curfew in place. This pattern continues until the order is rescinded by this board. During the week, the curfew is in effect every night, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And the Safer at Home directive is in effect 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until it's rescinded.
You are
Is
absolutely
that-
correct, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions?
Commissioner Miller, I just have one question.
Who is that? Who's speaking?
Commissioner Merman, sorry.
Mr. Merman, you recognize.
I want to ask Christine. So is this this emergency, well, the directive that you're talking about and the curfew, is that incorporated into our emergency policy order? Yes, that we have to reauthorize or do an extension every 7 days. Yes, Commissioner. It's considered as part of the state of emergency, and the order will be in effect as long as the state of emergency is in effect, meaning as long as that state of emergency is renewed every 7 days, this order would also be renewed until rescinded. So technically, we're renewing this every 7 days unless we need to make a change or add something or whatever going forward. That's correct, Commissioner. And if I could, Chairman Miller, I would like to point out at this time that it would be appropriate to approve the order extending the state of emergency for an additional 7 days prior to taking action on the stay-at-home directive and curfew order in that order.
So you're suggesting that we vote on the extension of the state of emergency, local emergency first and foremost, and then come back to the safe-at-home directive and curfew order?
That is correct.
Before we do that, do we have any more questions on the safer at home directive and curfew order? Are there any questions on that?
Chair Miller.
Who's this speaking?
Melissa Snively from the school board. I do have a question. May I speak?
You recognize.
Thank you, sir. There was some question about the verbiage using the terminology curfew in the last meeting. I wanted to just put feelers out there to see if that still, if people were still amenable to that word or that terminology. I know that Sheriff Foster had an issue with that, or recommended maybe using different terminology so that it was more succinct or clearer to the public what this exactly means. So could we have a discussion about that briefly, please?
Okay, who wants to discuss that?
I'd like to make a comment, if I could. This is Commissioner Merman.
You recognize.
You know, at one point, I thought that was important. I'll be honest to you, but I don't feel that way right now, and I'll tell you why. Because hanging on one word is not as important as educating the public about what we're trying to accomplish. And I really feel that the educating is the critical message.
You have to stay home.
Commissioner Miller, I think you've been very good about getting that message out to people, but now I think we need to increase it tenfold. We're going to need all hands and heads on deck to really educate our public about what we're trying to accomplish and not get the message that we're penalizing, that we're really trying to educate them and that we're doing it for their own good. And that's why I think that joint information group that was put together really reinforces what this order means, and I think we need to use them in a much larger way to get our message out.
Thank you. Is there any other discussions on the idea of concerning the
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I concur with the two previous speakers.
Speaking.
This is Mayor Rick Lott.
You recognize.
Thank you. When we first started out on this, I don't think there was a lot of support for an actual curfew. To me, a curfew says stay at home no matter what. So we make this statement of a curfew, but then the rest of the document's telling them, well, you're supposed to stay at home, but you can do this, 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 and this, you know. So I really like the language that the sheriff had the other day much better, that being safer at home times versus just a curfew. And so I really have a hard time supporting. I like certain aspects of the documents. I have some other questions, but I really would like to see us remove the curfew and use the sheriff's terminology if we could.
Okay, is there anyone else who wants to address this issue?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Who's speaking?
Andy Ross.
Yes,
My
Mr.
only
Ross, you recognize.
Yes, sir. My only concern about that is the same as it was the other day. I'm concerned that we will create the misunderstanding among the public because the stay-at-home directive that's in effect 24/7 has one set of exceptions, and the curfew that's only in effect certain hours and days of the week has another set of restrictions. And my concern is and I respectfully with the sheriff's concerns and Mayor Lott, but my concern is that if we use one term, that people will draw the conclusion that outside of 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. that they can go wherever, and this is only in effect during those hours. I'm not stuck on the word curfew if there's an alternative, but I do think it's wise to keep these two ideas and these two directives separate because they really do different things. One is in effect all the time, and one is in effect more restrictively during certain hours. So I'm not stuck on any particular word. I'm willing to have that discussion, but I do think that it's important we keep these two things distinct.
Okay, I've heard from 5 people concerning the not concurring with the word curfew or having a curfew, but I haven't heard any suggestions yet. I haven't heard any suggestions of any language that takes place yet, changing the word curfew yet. So what's the pleasure of this body? Because I haven't heard anything yet. I've only heard why.
Mr. Miller.
I've heard anything else yet.
Chairman Miller, this is Melissa from the school board. I have a suggestion.
Okay.
That would be to strike paragraph 2 of the document and then change the word curfew to safer at home.
So you're talking about under where it says, therefore, be it resolved that, and 2 where it says, additionally, curfew is hereby established within all incorporate. That's the area you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
And your suggestion do what?
And I would ask that that be stricken from the document.
Okay.
The other language.
And that perhaps the county attorney can clean up any other language that refers to that.
Okay, is that your motion or just a suggestion?
That would be my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by, excuse me. A motion by Ms. Stivers. Who seconded it?
Commissioner Overman.
Mr. Overman seconds it to remove 2 from the area where it goes into on page 3. Therefore be it resolved. She's saying on number 2 where it says additionally a curfew is hereby established in all incorporated, unincorporated areas all the way through to the end where it says rescind. That's the motion that she has. Now we're just voting on taking it out. We're not voting on the entire document. Understand? Is there any discussion concerning the motion on the table?
Mayor Castor.
Castor recognized.
If you take out the curfew, then we have to deal the safer at home as a directive, and the curfew is an order. So are we looking to make safer at home an order 24/7? So that law enforcement has the ability to enforce.
Ms. Beck, you want to answer that?
Yes, board members. That is something we can do, and we would need that kind of clarity and direction if that's the direction the board chooses to go in. And what I'm understanding is being described is to remove the curfew provisions from the order, which would result potentially in the document becoming a safer at home order 24/7. Does that apply during the...
Mr. Merman, hold on. Mayor Castor, did you have any further comments?
I'm sorry.
No, my preference would be that it is a safer at home order 24/7.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
Is that to mean 7 days a week?
Beck?
Yes, Commissioner, it would be, and it would be consistent, I believe, with what Pinellas County did.
Well, their businesses are allowed to stay open during the week. And then, so I don't really, I think we need to really understand the difference between the two, because I'm not for doing a complete shutdown of all of our businesses during the week.
Commissioner, if I may, this is Christine back again. If you did it as an order, there would still remain in the document, all of the current exemptions for businesses and individuals and services, which are set out in paragraph 4. So any businesses that meet those definitions or the exemptions contained in the Federal Homeland Security document would be exempt.
I mean, the problem is that there's a lot of mom and pop businesses out there. If I have to remind you all, it's 83% of our businesses in Hillsborough County that have 20 or fewer employees that are not on that list, that we have been telling you're going to be able to be open Monday through Friday. If we pass this change, they won't be able to be open, just the essential businesses. Is that correct?
There's a number of exceptions, and we could add something similar to paragraph 6, which is currently in the document, where it reads, businesses which are not described above in paragraph 4 and are able to maintain the required physical distancing of 6 feet may continue to operate. So you could consider something along those lines.
You mean operate during the week?
If they're able to to maintain the distance.
Right. Well, that's the only way I can really support this. I mean, I think we're mincing words, and I think I know a lot of people aren't happy with the word curfew, but honestly, I think at this point, I like the way it is, the way it came out. And I think at this point to change it midstream and then put 83% of all of our businesses in Hillsborough County into a big flux and concern right now would not be wise or prudent.
Mr. Merman, you got me confused. You say that you didn't want the curfew, but then you say you like the language as it is now. What are you talking about?
No, I said I wanted the curfew. No, I said before until I realized what effect it had after talking with the county attorney. No, I'm for keeping the word curfew in there. And yeah, I did change my mind because I realized that educating people is the most important part right now, not worrying about what words we're using.
So you're now in favor of keeping the word curfew in there with all the entities that come along with it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Rick Lott.
Yes, sir, Mayor Lott.
If I can ask you or the county administrator a question. If we remove the word curfew and went to 24 hours, I think what I like about that, or at least I know what I like about it, is that we're getting away from hours and days and times, and we're basically saying this safer at home policy is in place all the time, and it's telling people to be safer at home, but it's also allowing all of our businesses 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, just like they can right now under the one with curfew in it, okay, to be able to operate as long as they're essential to business or meet the criteria of being 6 feet apart and practicing safe standards. Okay, is that correct?
That's what I hear, but I'm going to ask Mr. Merrill or Ms. Beck to answer that, because from what I'm hearing, let me let Mr. Merrill or Ms. Beck answer that. One of you answer that?
That is correct, is my understanding.
Say that again, Ms. Beck. I'm sorry.
I believe Mr. Lott is correct.
Okay.
And what? And what, Ms. Beck?
He was, maybe ask him to restate it for the group, and then we can be clear.
Mayor Lott, would you restate what you said?
That if we stuck with the motion that we have to decide on here in a few moments, that it takes away the anxiety of what hours can we do what in, okay? But it allows all businesses that are essential or all businesses that are meet the criteria, the 6-foot rule and the other rules that we have in place to be able to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you take the times and the restrictions away, and it also allows our citizens to move about as just like it is in the current document. So I think it accomplishes the goal of getting rid of a curfew that gives a connotation that it's a shutdown, you're staying at home, you're locked up, you're locked down, that we're still able to build a function action as a quality society in Hillsborough County. So I think it accomplishes the goal that we're all looking to accomplish here. And I think we could get to hopefully a good vote.
Commissioner Miller, if I can just make sure that I understand it.
Hold on. Ms. Beck, was that you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it. It would be then a safer at home order operating 24/7, but providing for all of the stated exemptions for essential services and individuals and businesses, as well as if the businesses are able to maintain the 6-foot distancing, they could operate.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Let me ask a question. If we do that and the business cannot maintain a 6-foot distance between them and their clients, they cannot operate? Is that what we're saying?
It could only operate then in that case if they were considered an essential business or listed in one of the exemptions under paragraph 4.
Okay, so therefore barbershops, beauty parlors, nail salons, whatever the case may be, cannot maintain that 6-foot distance. They can no longer operate.
That's correct.
Commissioner Miller,
This is Commissioner Overman. I'd like to speak, please.
Hold on. I have Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Murray, recognized.
thank you. So actually what I said is what Mayor Locke clarified, and yes, I absolutely do support what that going forward.
Commissioner Overman, you recognized.
Thank you, Chair. In Section 8 of the document, it talks about businesses that are providing essential services you have to meet the 6-foot distance. There's also a series of recommendations and best practices in Section B, 8B, that indicates and recommendations for each of those businesses that are open when it is difficult for that essential service or that business to maintain the 6-foot distance. Various different recommendations, like requiring employees to complete a travel questionnaire or a risk contamination questionnaire when they go to work. There's a variety of good language in here that allows businesses to adopt practices. It also says that they can't protect their employees, they can't protect their customers for all practical purposes. They need to close. And we can't put a 5-alarm fire out, putting out the fire one room at a time. We have to help stop the cross-contamination that is accelerating in our county. So I encourage us to move on this document today. I seconded Ms. Snidely's motion. If it needs to be amended to include changing the language from directive to order, I'd like to recommend, see if she'd be interested in making that amendment and move forward on this.
So are you amending the motion of Ms. Snidely?
I'm asking Ms. Snidely if she would be willing to amend the motion that she made earlier that struck the language regarding the curfew and amended the safe at home directive language to be a safe at home order.
Snidely, are you ready to answer that question?
Yes, sir. Actually, before I answer that question, for the benefit of the group and the public, if we could get the county attorney to specify the difference between a directive and an order, I think that might be helpful for the group first.
Beck?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The difference between a directive and an order would be that a directive is viewed as strongly encouraging compliance with the document, but it would not be enforceable through law enforcement. A order is enforceable as set out in paragraph 15 of the document, if needed, and if all of the other attempts to achieve voluntary compliance cannot be achieved.
Okay, everybody understands that? So,
Commissioner Miller, this is Andy Ross.
hold on, Mr. Vice Mayor Ross. So, Commissioner Overman, what are you going to do? You're going to amend it? You're going to leave it as is? What are you going to do?
I'd like to amend the motion to indicate a safer at home order in section 1 and the rest of the document to be consistent to be approved today.
Is there a second?
I second, Mayor Castor.
Mayor Castor seconds the amendment. Okay, Vice Mayor Ross, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say to the group that I thought yesterday we had reached a very good consensus, and I was very pleased with the document that I received today. I thought it was well thought out. It was collaborative. It had input from all of us, and it was very smartly done. I thought it gave us very good, reasonable, safer at home restrictions during the daytime, and then tightened up those restrictions at night to help our law enforcement partners have the tools that they need to keep us safe from illicit activity, which usually occurs at night. And so I thought this was a very well thought out and well done compromise. And today, what we're contemplating here over the word curfew is we're contemplating in a very different thing here. We've gone from having a stay-at-home directive and a curfew during night to now we are instituting a countywide stay-at-home order, which I think is a very different thing. And if we were going to do this, we should have had this conversation yesterday. And I'm just kind of disappointed that this is the direction we're going when I thought we had achieved consensus. Thank you, sir.
Vice Mayor Ross, I agree with you totally. I thought yesterday we had a compromise that we had put together and gave some directions back to our county attorney and other attorneys to just plug in where it needs to be plugged in, language of however the legal people put it together. And now we come back and all of a sudden want to change everything we have together here. And to me, you're right. This should have been talked about yesterday instead of coming here today, wanting to change the whole scope of what we did yesterday. Now we got some of us confused, and some of us may not even vote on anything on here. And we're back to square one we were before yesterday. So I'm a little confused as to what happened between yesterday and today. We had an agreement yesterday. But can I finish talking, please? We had an agreement yesterday, and now we come back today that's totally changing. And I don't know what happened between yesterday and today. Mr. Overman, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. I think part of it is the fact that I think the public are having difficulty figuring out of these little timelines and not knowing exactly how to follow them. The document,
the education aspect is.
I understand that. However, the rules for our law enforcement to be able to follow are going to be easier if everyone understands exactly what they can and cannot do. And this document is an excellent document. Legal's worked up a lot of good accommodations for businesses to know how they and when they should be operating. And I'll close there.
Okay, we have an amendment by Commissioner Overman, second by Mayor Castor. Mr. Commissioner Overman, you want to restate your amendment to the motion again?
Chair Miller,
Commissioner Overman, you want to state your amendment to the motion again?
I'd like to amend Ms. Snively's motion to include in section 1 it as a safer at home order and leave out the curfew order language. And the time and date would all stay the same. And strike paragraph 2, item 2, that discusses the various different times in the document and make edits accordingly.
Okay, we have an amendment by Commissioner Overman, second by Mayor Castor. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Chair Miller, this is Melissa Snively. I do have a question.
You recognize Commissioner Snively.
Thank you. I would, because of the difference between the directive and the order, the definitions between those two, and the different sets of resources that might be necessary with regard to law enforcement, I just wanted to better understand what implications those would have. Changing it from a directive, a 24/7 safer at home directive, to an order, what kind of implications will that have on our law enforcement? And I'm hoping that perhaps Sheriff Cronister could chime in and give his opinion on which one he might prefer, because it will have a great, it could have great ramifications on his law enforcement resources. Thank you.
Jeff Cronister, you want to address that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Ultimately, this is about messaging, and any order would build upon that. Whether you call this a curfew, a stay-at-home order, or a safer-at-home directive, our shared intent and the ultimate goal is to restrict movement to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus. I certainly would advocate for this to be an order and make sure that it's clear and concise so the public understands the limitations on movement, and to ensure law enforcement understands and can effectively enforce the order.
Now, does he answer your question?
Yes, Chair Miller, and thank you, Sheriff Cronister, for answering that. That gives some better clarity to accepting the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Jeff Cronister, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir, of course, Mr. Chair.
What's your feelings? I haven't heard anything that you. What is your feelings on curfew and not using the word curfew or not using the word curfew? I remember what you said.
I certainly understand the negative connotation that comes with curfew. Most people think about the movies when we turn our county into a police state and we set up police checkpoints and we start checking every single person and vehicle that's out during these restrictive hours. So I understand why people are hung up on the word curfew. They serve as the same. If you look at the two orders, whether you call it a stay-home order evening or you call it a 24-hour stay-home order, an order is an order. So again, and the intent's the same. The intent's to restrict movement.
So you don't want the word curfew utilized. You're recommending that we don't use the word curfew. Is that what you're saying?
I think that the word curfew is doing nothing but causing more panic in an already panic-stricken community, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see us strike the word curfew and have a 24-hour stay-at-home order, making sure that our community understands the exemptions that are applicable, almost to where if you have a legitimate purpose to be away from your home, you're fine being away from home. If not, we're asking you to stop the spread of the virus by limiting your actions to being at home.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair. So the amendment that's on the table by Commissioner Ullman, second by Mayor Castor, basically takes the directive to say a safer at home order. It strikes the word and curfew order. That's on page 4 at the top, and then that's on the number 1 and then number 2. It strikes number 2 completely that pertains to the curfew. Am I correct? Is that what that's what you meant, Mr. Overman?
That is correct.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment to the motion, please call the roll.
Miller?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Cronister?
Yes, sir.
Castor?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Ross?
Yes.
Watt?
Yes.
Snively?
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0.
Okay.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
This is Christine Beck. Can I just remind you that before you take the final vote on this, that you have the emergency order extended? Procedurally, that's necessary.
I'm going to get to that, Ms. Beck. Just hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
All right. So what we have now is a safe at home order. It's not a directive anymore. It's an order. And the curfew language is hereby stricken. Okay? So that is now the amended motion concerning the order. We're now going to have to move to the vote to extend the state of local emergency. Ms. Beck, is there anything you want to comment on that before we vote on that?
No, sir.
I have a motion to extend the state of the current the state of local emergency order. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved by Commissioner Overman.
Motion by Commissioner Overman. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor Castor.
Castor seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on extending the state of local emergency? Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Miller?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
Merman?
Yes.
Cronister?
Yes.
Castor?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Watt?
Yes.
Snively?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carried 8-0.
Okay, now we're back on the safer at home order. At this point, there was a motion by Ms. Snively, second by Commissioner Overman. It's an amended motion at this particular point in time. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, Chad Cronister, with this changes, just want to be sure that the motion, or I should say the order, still goes in effect tomorrow at 10 p.m.
Ms. Beck?
Yes, we can accommodate that. We'll have to fix the document to make it a safer at home order 24/7 and remove the references to a curfew. But we should be able to distribute that very quickly this afternoon, and then they'll have it go into effect tomorrow at 10 p.m.
Thank you.
Any further discussions on the motion? Any further
Mr. Chairman, Rick Lott.
A lot, you reckon?
Okay, I only have two items here I'd like to discuss real quick. And the one item, if I can ask Mr. Miller here. Mr. Miller, based on this document that we have in front of us, to the best of your knowledge, what businesses in Hillsborough County would be closed down?
After what we just discussed, I think those businesses that cannot have the 6-foot distances between them are the ones that will be closed down. Am I correct, Ms. Beck?
That's correct, and if they're not essential, services, yeah.
So we're talking about nail technicians, hair salons,
barbershops,
yes.
Barbershops,
those type of businesses.
massage.
Yep.
Yes.
Alterations.
Alterations would be because they have to measure and they can't measure from 6 feet apart.
Any other that we can think of? Okay. Well then, as I read this document also, I heard Commissioner Overman yesterday speak about that we'd like for our hotels to, obviously, if we needed a hotel to give rooms first to individuals that are helping with COVID-19, those individuals working in that workforce would have first priority on the rooms, is how I understood it. But as I read number 10, I believe it is in the document, it actually states here that hotels can't take any new reservations, which would be shutting down our entire hotel industry in Hillsborough County, if I'm reading this correctly.
May I respond, Commissioner Miller?
Yes, I was just yes. Go ahead.
So there's a number of exceptions there in that paragraph 10 for healthcare professionals, first responders, National Guard members, law enforcement, state or federal government employees, airline crew members, patients, families, journalists, others providing direct services in response to COVID-19, displaced residents or visitors, persons utilizing hotels as transitional living arrangements, persons sheltering in hotels due to domestic violence, hotel employees, service providers and contractors, or individuals who, for any reason, are temporarily unable to reside in their home due to exigent circumstances. They're all defined as essential lodgers.
But if I decided tonight I wanted to go stay in a local hotel, I couldn't unless I meet one of those criteria, correct? Correct?
Correct, but correct.
Then that would be essentially shutting down our hotel industry in Hillsborough County.
Can I make a comment on that? This is Commissioner Overman.
Commissioner Overman.
Commissioner Miller, I think
hold on, Ms. Beck, you recognize.
I'm going to recognize Jenny Tarr, who can address that question.
Are you there?
Yes. Hi, Commissioner. How are you? Members of the policy group, I do want to say, Mayor Lott, we did receive a comment from your attorney, Ken Buckman, and what he was proposing, which I think is in line with the point that you're making today, is that Commissioner Overman's motion would be to give persons listed in what you have before you priority to lodging and not just an exclusive right to. And unfortunately, with the timing that we were working under, that suggested revision did not make the document, and I apologize for that. But if that's still the language, Mayor Lott, that you would like to see in and the Policy Council agrees, I will be happy to put that in immediately.
If I can respond. I agree with that, adding the language priority, and it also supports what Commissioner Overman was trying to accomplish, what I thought was a great recommendation. So yes, I support that.
Any objections to that, ladies and gentlemen? Any objections? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Mayor Lott, you have something else?
No, sir, that's it.
All right. We're on the motion to adopt the Safer at Home order. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Miller?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Cronister? Yes. Castor?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Lott?
Yes.
Snively?
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0.
Okay. Is there any other discussions or actions we need to take today? Mr.
Miller?
Pardon me?
Chair Miller, this is Melissa Snively from the school board.
Okay, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make a few comments based on some of the conversations we've had. And I just want to thank everyone on the Emergency Policy Group for their leadership. We're all here representing our constituents, and I represent all students in our county, and specifically was elected to represent people in the eastern part of this very big and diverse county, and I value very much what they have to say. Their needs, expectations, and values can sometimes be different from people in other parts of the county, including the city of Tampa. Part of leadership, though, is listening to the people we represent. And when we make decisions, we have to consider people's views as well as data and facts. When we make decisions that might be the best decision, but might require time to understand and process, we have a duty to bring people along with us so that there is buy-in and clarity with those decisions. We're all in this together, and I appreciate the cooperation and understanding that allows this order to go into effect at this time, and it's reasonable for those being most impacted, with the opportunity, of course, to revisit it every 7 days based on any new data we receive. So thank you very much for your leadership, Chair Miller, and the leadership of this group. All voices are very much listened to and appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Snively. We appreciate that very, very, very much. Mr. Merrill, anything you want to say, sir?
Nope, no other further business.
Okay.
And Commissioner Miller, can I make a request?
Hold on. Who's speaking?
Commissioner Merman.
Mr. Merman,
At the next EPG meeting, which I assume is going to be Monday, are we still going to stay on the 2-day-a-week schedule?
Mr. Merrill, you want to address that?
That would be up to the group.
What I thought. It's up to us.
Okay.
You want to meet Monday and Thursday, or just Thursday or Monday? It's up to us.
Well, I think probably our cases are starting to surge, so I'm going to recommend we stay on the Monday-Thursday schedule just to stay on top of things in case there needs to be further action. But what I'd like to ask is possibly Leona Lopez or somebody, communications people, give us some information on how they're going to do outreach and communication to the county to inform them of all these changes. And that's my request.
I'm almost positive by when Ms. Beck and her staff gets together and inserts any language that we have added to this order, that they will forward that, which they have been doing, to Ms. Lopez and her staff, and they do immediately get it out to as many people as they possibly can through the mechanism they utilize. The city of Tampa does the same thing under Mayor Castor. I imagine Temple Terrace and Plant City have the same operations of doing the same thing. So I'm quite sure once this is completed and the county attorney's office gets it out, there will be information passed out immediately at that point.
Okay.
Commissioner Miller, Mike Merrill, we'll use the Joint Information Center, the JIC, which is our central command that incorporates all of the jurisdictions, all the agencies as a joint information center, and that'll be the portal that it goes out on. We'll also work with the media and be sure to get it out.
Okay, and they'll send all that to each of the EPG members also?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wants to address anything?
Mr. Merrill,
This is
on
Commissioner
red
Ackerman. I have an item for Monday's meeting.
Oh, wait a minute. I have 3 people speaking at the same time. Ladies first. Who's the lady?
Thank you. This is Commissioner Overman.
Sure, recognize.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what we also will need on Monday is a report of medical capacity for beds and a report on our process for dealing with those individuals that have gone through the telehealth, have been referred to testing when we have limited testing available, and then what our process is for those individuals that believe they're infected or isolating them from their families. Currently, they're being sent back to their home, which means they're exposing anyone in their household until we get their test results back. And this yesterday or today, we had a report of someone in Hillsborough County who died at home after being diagnosed positive. So I think it's important for we help communicate to the public, but also know what we need to do when it comes to prioritizing those hotels we were talking about earlier. Now, what is the process when someone presents potentially positive, but it takes 5 to 8 days to get results because of the backlog of testing? Well, how do we help those persons keep their community safe when they believe they're possibly contagious with something? So I need that information from our medical professionals and from our emergency teams.
Does staff get
So
that?
I need to make that a motion for that to be added to the agenda for Monday.
There's no motion needed. I think staff has the crust of what you want, and I'm quite sure Mr. Merrill and staff will have that ready for us, or you have someone ready for us on our meeting on Monday.
Great. Thank you. One other item.
Okay.
I think we need to discuss outstanding utility bills that may be in default. We've put out there that people can pay online, but what is our policy on either deferring or providing cash reimbursements for those individuals who now no longer have work, that we can, we can address those outstanding or accumulating bills.
Mr. Merrill, you want to address that or have someone do that on Monday?
Well,
TICO's already,
yeah.
TICO's already
Hold
taken
on,
action.
hold on, folks,
to deal
please.
with it.
Go ahead, say what, Mr. Merrill?
TICO's already taken action through the end of April, I believe. So at this point, no one is being turned off or assessed any penalties. They announced that, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. So
Doug Driggers sent that out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but they just extended the time frame to the end of April. And actually, they're asking the group in Tallahassee, the public utility group, they're going to reduce their rates by 11%. So they're really not only not delaying payment, but they're also going to reduce the electricity rates going forward.
Okay, is there anything else?
As it pertains to that issue, in that discussion, we need to decide if someone has applied for cash payments to pay their rent or their wastewater bill. It's maybe not in the county, but this applies to our municipalities. Whether or not we are going to be able to help subsidize those utilities, because even if they defer, until end of April or June or whatever, those bills still come due. And we need to know how that's going to impact our finances, our cash payments, and people's lives. So I'd love to hear how we plan on working through those issues.
we currently deal with any social service issues through our social service department. And we've been doing extensive outreach into the community on our website and other portals. Anybody who needs help paying their bills, paying their rent, that's a social service issue. And we're covering that through either through our existing appropriations or through our catastrophic reserve.
Excellent. So if we're waiving the restriction of applying for those benefits if they've been paid to a family or an individual in the last 12 months?
No, what I'm saying is that anybody who needs help will get help. They just need
Excellent.
to let us know they need help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other business or discussions that come before us today?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Lott.
Lott, you recognize. Lott?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had to hit the mute button. Today we obviously affected a lot of people's lives with believing that we did it for the better good, and I believe we did. But and any time that we make a decision, there's those that are on the wrong side of that decision. And today it happened to be those individuals that are part of the nail technicians, hairdressers, massage industry, and so forth that obviously mean a lot in our community. I think one reason why they're not included in this is simply because they meet one rule in our order. And I would like to ask if Mr. Merrill could have someone from the state health department, because those jobs are licensed and regulated by the state health department. If someone could be on our call on Monday and tell us, do they recommend that those individuals should not be able to operate, or do they believe that with the policies they have in place and the sterilization policies they have in place, maybe we could amend our policy on Monday to be able to include those people and not put however many thousands of people in Hillsborough County out of work if it's just an unintended consequences by this order. So if we could have someone from the state health department to discuss those three categories, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merrill, you heard that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion come before us today?
Mr. Chair, Chad Cronister.
Yes, Sheriff.
Mr. Chair, as this meeting comes to an end and individual messaging begins, I ask that everyone include in their messaging that placards, passes, or letters from any local law enforcement agency are not required for passage during this order. We've gotten a lot of requests wondering how they get a letter from the sheriff's office or any type of placard or pass. So as everyone starts this message, and I just ask that to help us all out and make sure that we're relaying to this community that they don't need any of these three for any type of passage during this order.
That's important, Sheriff. He's your mayor now. That's important, Sheriff. Thank you very much for that input. That is vitally important. Thank you. Anything else to come before us today? Any other business? Any other discussions? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on the call. I think we've got a lot accomplished today. We came to a compromise again, and I think we reached a compromise that we all can live with. Some things may change as we go on between now and Monday. There's a lot happening out there. This virus is spreading very fast, and we may have to make some adjustments on Monday. And if we do have to make those adjustments, I ask that we come here and remember the 3 C's that we talked about earlier. I think those 3 C's got us to a focal point today where we made the right decision. We can't make everyone happy. We just cannot make 1.4, 1.5 people happy. If we did, then I don't know what we'd be calling ourselves, but we've got to do what we can to make sure that we keep everyone in this county safe. Everyone in this county safe. So again, thank you all. We'll have another meeting on Monday, and be safe and God bless. We'll adjourn.
Everybody, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. A major change of events here in Hillsborough County regarding how this order is going to impact residents and businesses in Hillsborough County. As was widely reported here across the state of Florida, specifically here in the Tampa Bay area yesterday, the way that this was shaping up and the way that the agreement was in place, this was going to be a stay-at-home order or a stay-at-home directive that would last, in essence, 24 hours, 7 days a week, plus a curfew. And the curfew would go into effect overnight, beginning at 10 p.m., lifting at 5 a.m., and then more significantly impacting weekends. That is no longer the case. The breaking news here from the Hillsborough County EPG meeting is that there will not be a curfew put into effect, only a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week stay-at-home order. Not directive, a stay-at-home order. There's a lot of different semantics, labels, things that we're trying to break down for people to make this as easy to understand as possible, but we are fully prepared to answer as many questions as possible. But you heard there, towards the end of the meeting, you heard them talking about specific types of industries that are going to be impacted. You heard them talking about the hotel industry. You heard them talking about barbershops, nail salons, hair salons, spas, so on and so forth. This is still going to have a tremendous impact in Hillsborough County. It's just not going to include the curfew, as was previously suggested yesterday when the EPG met. So, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. I'm here to answer your questions. I have pages and pages and pages of notes. I've reviewed this relentlessly over the last 24 hours to be able to answer your questions as best as possible about what this means. And while this is a sudden change of events with the dropping of the curfew language and the curfew portion of the resolution, we are still prepared to keep you in the know, let you know what this means. And I want to let you know that Tampa Mayor Jane Castor and Tampa Police Chief Brian Dugan will be appearing here on WFLA Now in the hours ahead to answer your questions about what this means for the city of Tampa, what this means for Hillsborough County, and specifically for Chief Dugan, how this is going to be enforced. If an officer comes across somebody that is non-compliant and the officer says, you have to go home, and then the person responds, I'm not going to go home, what happens? How is this enforced? What is the enforceability? Are there any punishments? Are there any penalizations? What could happen to somebody that is repeatedly non-compliant? We're going to ask that to Chief Dugan. I believe we'll have him here on WFLA Now coming up at 3 o'clock. Mayor Castor a little bit later on today. All right. I'm here as a resource for you to answer your questions. Use the hashtag HeyJB, and I will do my very best to answer as many questions here as possible. Jacqueline Marie Monroe, hashtag HeyJB. We are all confused. Daycares are not 6 feet apart. Are they still going to be open? Daycares are a great question there, Jacqueline. They are, as we understand it, they are considered non-essential because daycares are private institutions. Usually they're private organizations. And the only education that falls within the Department of Homeland Security's labeling of an essential service is an educator within a government facility. So anything that is publicly funded or publicly owned or has is tied to being a government facility categorically. So daycares are non-essential, and you can't really go about your work at a daycare and maintain 6 feet away from everybody. So as we understand it, that is considered non-essential, and that would mean that daycares would have to close. Now, I say that based on the language, based on what we have in front of us here textually, but I want to make sure that we get that to you specifically. So I'm going to make a note. You have my word, Jacqueline, and others who have been asking about daycares. When we have Mayor Jane Castor on earlier, I have a list of questions to ask her, but one of the questions that I'm going to ask is specifically about daycares. You have my word. So come back later and we'll make sure that we get that answered for you. Looking for some more hashtag HeyJB comments here, everybody. Kristen Quaquarucci, a WFLA Top Facebook fan, asking about car dealerships. So car dealerships, as we understand it, auto repair and maintenance workers are still allowed to go about their business. And many car dealerships have maintenance shop, they have the car shop where they would do maintenance work. That's another one I'm going to write down for Mayor Castor, car sales, because yes, mechanics can continue going about their job, but what about salesmen? Can you sell a car and constantly at all times maintain a distance of 6 feet between you and your customer if you're a salesman? It's a very important question. We'll see if we can get that one answered too. But yeah. Christina Caldwell and Deb Crandall saying hashtag AJB, that's not what they said in the meeting. And Drew Didono saying, I heard that's not true about daycares because while daycare is non-essential, essential service providers need daycare services still in order to be able to perform their essential functions. Right, and that is again, the county has deferred to federal. They have deferred to the Department of Homeland Security in what is deemed an essential service. Based on the federal language, daycares would be considered non-essential. Let's ask Mayor Castor coming up here when she joins us, everybody. Because there is talk that it would be considered essential, but when they're deferring to a federal document that says it's not essential, who's right and who's wrong? Now, normally you go up the chain, and up the chain would mean that federally is what we're supposed to be listening to here. But why don't we ask Tampa Mayor Jane Castor specifically about daycares before you take it from me, because I would like to know for myself so that you guys at home are informed. But remember, everything about the categorization of essential versus non-essential has been deferred to the Department of Homeland Security, this federal list. And the federal list would state, as it's understood, that daycares are considered non-essential. But we'll find out. Join us for Tampa Mayor Jane Castor coming up in the live Q&A. Hashtag AJB, convenience stores, small ones, no 6 feet possible. Yeah, and so stores, I think that we're going to ask about retail, because if it's a pharmacy, it's one thing. If it's grocery store, it's another. Is a convenience store, let's say at a gas station, it sells food, it sells You can go into a gas station and get Advil or get Tylenol and get various medicine. So food and medicine is available at convenience stores. So as we understand it, that would remain open. But I think gas stations have to remain open anyway. So a convenience store at a gas station would remain open. But a small convenience store that is not on a gas station property is a good question. We'll see if we can get that answered for you as well. Somebody was asking about Marcus Burnett, hashtag HeyJB. What about truck drivers that deliver to new construction homes? No, I think transport continues. Believe so. We'll try to get all of these answered as well. I'll write down truck drivers. The point of this, I'm going to ask all these questions for you guys so that we get all of this answered, right? Just make sure that you come back later from when we have Mayor Castor on, because there's no point in me asking these questions if the people who are asking them through Facebook Live, you at home, aren't there to listen to the answer, right? So just make sure that you join us later, because we're going to get all these answers for you. It's going to be a one-stop shop to get your questions answered, and we want to make sure that we have as many people watching as possible. It's all about spreading good information to people and making sure that you're aware and your family is aware and your employer is aware or your employee is aware. And so let's make sure that we really spread the news about Mayor Castor joining us here on WFLA Now, because there's going to be a lot of really pertinent questions being asked. Lila Varela, hashtag HJB, please clarify the stay-at-home order with the 24/7 please clarify the stay-at-home going into effect that's 24/7 with the no curfew. Does that mean we can not be out in the streets at all? A curfew is far more tough of a restriction. It's so much more restrictive on when you look at the rules and the procedures of it. There's only certain reasons you can be out during a curfew. Meanwhile, a stay-at-home order, while the stay-at-home order is more powerful than a stay-at-home directive, it still allows for non-essential businesses to remain open if you can work from home, or if you can maintain a distance of 6 feet from all coworkers and customers at all times. So the big difference is that with the curfew, if it was non-essential, those businesses, for the most part, they have to close on the weekends and overnights. Now, most non-essential businesses aren't really open overnight, so it doesn't matter. But how about the non-essential businesses that are open on Saturday and Sunday? They would be forced to close under this. So I think that when you heard the commissioners speaking a little bit about how businesses would be impacted, the curfew was really, it was an extra step. Now, here's the thing. There are people at home right now who think that extra step is really necessary to prevent us from becoming New York, or to prevent us from becoming California or another state, or, God forbid, depending on how things go in the weeks ahead, something like Italy, right? The whole idea is stopping the spread. And when you're talking about stopping the spread, people want to see as much precautionary measures be put into effect as possible. We ran a poll, a WFLA Now interactive Facebook poll, unscientific, but still very, very revealing. And we asked, do you agree with the plan as it was, the plan that would have put a stay-at-home order and a curfew, a hybrid order together in place in Hillsborough County? The number one answer with 2/3 of respondents was, yes, I want to see the stay-at-home and the curfew together. 19% said just the stay-at-home order, and 5% said they only wanted to see a curfew, which is, of course, perfectly logical as to why that number is so low. So the most popular response in our poll was the stay-at-home and the curfew. People wanted to see both. At least 2/3 of our poll respondents wanted to see both. But that would have come with major consequence for businesses, non-essential businesses, on weekends and overnight. So now the 24/7 stay-at-home goes into effect, or safer at home. They call it safer at home. That goes into effect. And it allows businesses to remain open all the time. non-essential businesses to remain open all the time if their employees can either work from home or maintain a distance of 6 feet or more at all times from coworkers and customers. Hopefully that makes sense. Caitlin Burgess, hashtag AJB, what about airlines and flights to and from Tampa? Tampa International Airport remains open. We had a great question earlier on who would close Tampa International. That is a multifaceted thing where the federal, state government, the international implications of closing an international airport is enormous and sometimes even beyond comprehension. So we don't know the exact answer of who would have the final say, but it would be a collaborative effort, we understand. And, of course, Governor DeSantis would be involved. Trump's coronavirus task force there, the cabinet would be involved. Tampa International Airport would be involved. The FAA would be involved, so on and so forth. Giselle Muniz, hashtag AJB, banks, ? Yeah, banks remain open. Workers can continue reporting to banks. It is a financial institution. It is considered an essential service. Tonya Keenan, hashtag AJB, what are the weekend hours? There are no weekend hours. Let me repeat that. There are no weekend hours. There's no weekend curfew. It is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week. And I have to update the text on our screen, everybody. I apologize for that. Let's do this here together. I'm going to put developing. No curfew in Hillsborough. Stay at home passes. Got to squeeze this in here a little bit, everybody. So bear with me right like that. So no weekend hours, 24/7 until further notice for the stay-at-home, safer-at-home order. Sean Treadsway, hashtag AJB, small distribution centers and warehouses that only have a few employees but do delivery every day, will they need to close? If those deliveries are considered essential, they're an essential service and therefore continue to remain open, regardless. If it's a non-essential form of delivery, I don't know, what would, nothing comes to mind about what would be non-essential delivery at this point, something specific, but if you can maintain a distance of 6 feet from your customers at all time, then you can remain open. Gloria Guzman, hashtag AJB, please. I'm here, Gloria. What about Pinellas County? Are we following what Hillsborough is doing? Please, I need your answer. Yeah, Gloria, Pinellas already did this. This was the breaking news the other day. Pinellas County was ahead of Hillsborough County, and it usually falls the opposite way. Usually you see the most populated county go first and then subsequent populated counties to follow. But in this case, Pinellas went first with a safer-at-home resolution that passed. There was some disagreement in Pinellas County, just like there was disagreement here in Hillsborough County, but that passed, and notices are going out to all businesses that are remaining open. Yeah, I don't know if you missed our press conference earlier, but Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, these big, humongous yellow notices are going up on businesses that are remaining open, listing the CDC guidelines and listing what the recommendations are from the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners. So they were ahead of this. And not to be unfair to Hillsborough County, it's not like they were behind. They just took a couple of extra days to come to their inevitable decision, which was to not go with a curfew and to go with a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, safer-at-home order instead. Looking for more hashtag HeyJB comments here, everybody. Hashtag HeyJB, what about the Postal Service? Yeah, Cheyenne Brooks Evans with the hashtag HeyJB comment. Postal Service, as we understand it, is essential and continues. Also asking, would Polk County, do they have the same plans for shutting down? So as we were just talking about, we anticipate Polk County, Pasco County, Hernando County, Sarasota County, Manatee County, and beyond, Citrus County. Look for more announcements in the days to come. Let's see what happens. But remember, each county is going to make a determination based on how many cases they have. So if there's a county with fewer cases, or fewer positive tests, they might be a little bit less inclined to take a drastic measure such as this versus one that has more cases. So while we say all the time that it's very possible that other counties could follow suit, it's also very important to note that they're going to determine what's best for their county residents. So stay tuned. BitGray, hashtag AJB. What about moving companies? Yeah, we talked about this. Moving companies are in a gray area because there's transport and shipping that is on the federal list, but I think that there are certain things that are excluded. I believe that we just got Tampa Police on the phone here, everybody. So what we're going to do... All right, we have to get ready for the 3 o'clock with Chief Brian Dugan. You want to know how this is going to be enforced here in the city of Tampa? Stay tuned. We'll be back in about 10 minutes on WFLA Now. 3 o'clock, the top of the hour, Chief Dugan joining us for a live Q&A. That way he can answer some of your questions about enforceability within the city of Tampa. We'll be right back.